you gotta, I guess the story is put yourself out there, and the worst thing that's gonna happen is someone's gonna say no, but then you just keep moving forward.
What's up, everyone? Mark here. Welcome to this episode of Masters of Crowdfunding. I just got done with my interview with Mikey. He is one of the co-founders of Accidental Cyclops, and they're the creators of multiple games. They just finished up their second Kickstarter. It is a TTRPG called Surviving Strangehollow, and they raised over $100,000. And we talked about a lot of different things. I think one of the most interesting things about this interview is that the way in which they go and create their games is they actually go to people that already have IP, they already have content, and they approach them about making a game around that IP. And they've been really successful at it. And so we talked a lot about that. We also talked about the marketing behind the game, how he was able to raise over $45,000 in one day, which is almost the entire funding of his previous campaign. And so there's a lot more in this. So whether you have a new tabletop game that you're trying to create, or just any product that you're trying to launch on Kickstarter, there is a lot to take away from this episode. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Masters of Crowdfunding with Mikey Hauerluck. All right, we are live. Mikey, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Surviving Strangehollow. This is your latest Kickstarter campaign. You had one in the past, which we'll definitely get into, but right off the bat, can you just tell us a little bit more about what it is? What is Surviving Strangehollow?
Sure. So Surviving Strangehollow is a 5th edition D&D, and 6th edition, whenever they end up calling it, D&D supplement that's based on the work of Emily Harris. She's a watercolor artist from the United Kingdom, and kind of think of it as a cross between like Ghost in the Darkness, crossed with Journey to the Center of the Earth, crossed with Labyrinth. So the movie Labyrinth, if you're familiar. So it's kind of a mix of all of those, and Emily does she's a hand painting watercolor artist, and we sort of did that to bring her art to a larger community, and D&D and 5th edition and soon to be 6th edition was the right audience to sort of bring her art and her world to the TTRPG community.
But this was actually your second campaign, which I alluded to in my first question, and so I want to go back to the beginning. The Real Thing was your very first Kickstarter campaign, but we can go back to even before that. I'd love to know the origin story of, you and Jason, your partner, starting to create games and why you decided to launch your first Kickstarter.
Yeah, so Accidental Cyclops started probably in 2012 or so. So it's been a thing that's been around for a while. We actually started as Jason and I and some other of our friends from Indianapolis. I'll say naively thought, board games, how hard could those be to design? Pretty hard. Is the short answer there. Right. Is really hard. But, we're all just, gamers and creative individuals, and just wanted to see if we could and just kind of like work on something that sounded interesting and fun and a challenge. And I remember we were working at a friend's house, our other friend Eric, and kind of just talking about games and making a game, that'd be kind of fun. And I think I drove over to Jason's house a couple days later, said, hey, what if we actually did this? What if we for real did this? And, kind of always had a little bit of an entrepreneurial mindset. And it's how I said, how hard could it be? Very hard, kind of the thing. But we started working on, board games together. It was me and Jason and our friends, Eric, Adam, and Dustin, back in the day of, working on board games, and, sort of evolved, and we worked on that for a while, and then it kind of worked on a couple games. We, had some, development agreement, that ended up not panning out, and then it sort of sat on the shelf for a while until, Jason and a friend of his from high school, Jason Piercy, started working on The Real Thing, which was essentially, they're huge Faith No More fans, the band Faith No More, and said, hey, what if we made a game based on this, and reached out to the band, and they said, yeah, go ahead. So that's where The Real Thing came from in the short version, and Jason will have a longer, better version of that story, but that was the genesis of The Real Thing, an indie RPG based on, the Apocalypse engine stuff. And then we went from there.
Yeah. So you said 2012 was when you started making games with your friends, right?
Yeah, I think that's when we registered accidentalcyclops.com domain because it was available.
Okay, but it wasn't until 2022 that the real thing launched. So were you creating games just for yourselves at that point or between that time?
I mean, I think we always had the intent of not just for ourselves, but from going down the publishing route. We had a couple of different games we worked on. One which was, I still don't know the name of it because naming things is hard. But it's sort of odds manipulation. I don't want to say Euro style, but like tableau building, engine building, odds manipulation game. I think the current version of the game is called Princes, that we demoed at the first exposure playtest hall at Gen Con a few years back. We had another one that is Pancake House, which is a family dice game that I love, and I want that game to exist in the world, and just finding the right time to do that. But I think like tabletop RPG is sort of a lot of our first loves, so we kind of keep going back to that, and that's just a fun place to work in because sometimes with Strangehollow or Powered by the Apocalypse, you have these systems that exist, so you have something that you can tweak, and it's a toolkit as opposed to like, here's the rules. So those types of games give you the ability to kind of take something that works and then make it something that's unique and interesting.
No, that sounds awesome. And when it comes to, your first tabletop RPG, The Real Thing, launching on Kickstarter, why did you decide to launch it on Kickstarter?
And honestly, because Kickstarter is kind of the place you launch games. It's just got the most sort of, eyeballs that aren't necessarily going there because you're bringing your own audience. So you have the highest likelihood of getting people that are just browsing Kickstarter or things like that to Kickstarter. It's sort of the name, like I Kickstarted this thing. Even if you didn't end the backer kit, you'll still probably say I Kickstarted it. So I think it's just got that recognition, and they were the first in that space to really blow up in that space and grow, and it's just the place that we've had the most success, because we did have, after The Real Thing, we did have a backer kit project for the follow-up to The Real Thing, which was basically the second and third books of that set, and that's finishing up that project right now, going to fulfillment. I don't know what the date is, but soonish. So we did that on BackerKit, and it did okay. And there was a number of reasons that it did okay. I don't think it was like because it was on BackerKit. I think there were other stuff, but I think Kickstarter is the place you go when you wanted crowdfunding.
It definitely has the strongest brand, that's no doubt, and the numbers to back it up, because of just how the quantity of games that are launching on the platform is. I mean, it's really no contest right now, even though there are other platforms, like you said, BackerKit and GameFound being another one, which are growing. So it's really interesting to see other players coming into the space. I would be interested to dive into why you chose to go with BackerKit for some of the other campaigns, or for the other campaign that you're currently fulfilling. But I'm going to table that, actually. So a little tease. Yeah. We'll get to that a little bit later, because I want to stay with, some of the, like the origin, of how just you getting started, but more specifically now diving into, I'm so curious, like what goes into actually creating a D&D supplement? Even as much detail as you want, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are listening that are first-time creators and are really wondering how they could do this themselves.
The short answer is you got to put yourself out there and ask. Coming to a place with existing content, part of it is you just got to cut through the noise, which is hard to do. There's a lot of stuff launched, and there's a lot of games out there, and you have to have a kind of a unique hook, and it helps to have an existing IP. We found that at least that's what we've been doing, is finding existing IPs, whether it's Emily's Strangehollow art or the Music of Faith and saying, hey, can we make a game based on this? And so they have an existing audience that doesn't always necessarily have a large tabletop RPG. The Venn diagram might not be like a circle. There might be a little bit of spread there, and it's like bringing other people into this sort of world and a product that might interest them. So don't be afraid to ask, and don't don't let being told no stop you from asking, because sometimes they'll say yes. We reached out to Emily, and Jason is Kickstarted several of her books, and has oldest daughter, for kind of like to show her and look at art with her, and she's she's a budding artist and very talented, and it's like, this is cool stuff, and hey, would it be okay if we talked and made a game out of your stuff? And she said yeah, and so the conversation evolved, and some of it's just confidence, or I don't know, something to say, hey, can we do something together? And then following that up with effort and work. We got very fortunate, because I think when we started that project, it was kind of me, Jason, and Emily talking things through.
So so this was the case in both, both the first Kickstarter and the second, right? Where you actually went to people that had pre-existing content and a pre-existing brand, right?
Yeah. And for Strangehollow, was we basically went to Emily and said, hey, can we do something? And she said, yeah. We started talking and figuring out what that book was going to be. And then I don't remember where, but Jason kind of posted someplace on Facebook about like looking for, designers or something like that to help work on this project. And Sean Merwin reached out to us, or replied to that and said, hey, yeah, I'm interested. And then you look at Sean Merwin's body of work and you're like, holy crap, this guy's the real deal. Like, this guy, he's so great, bright, talented, pleasure to work with. And, we met with him at Gen Con. We met for breakfast and kind of pitched him the project. And he said yes. Like, you gotta, I guess the story is put yourself out there, and the worst thing that's going to happen is someone's going to say no, but then you just keep moving forward.
So how are these deals typically structured? And don't feel pressure to talk about like actual numbers, but is it typically, like a one-time payment, or are people getting a piece of the actual game? How does that work?
So it depends. We, one of the things that we see is that the creators, the people that are writing tabletop content, or writing modules for games, or making new games, like what they're paid isn't great all the time, unless you're someone who is just the ridiculous names, but even then sometimes. So we kind of just asked people how they wanted to be paid. Some people wanted a percentage of the campaign plus a word rate. Some people wanted just a word rate, and we generally said, okay, well, like, or what would you like to see out of this project? Like, this is what we anticipate raising. What would you like to see out of this project for the project to feel like it was worthwhile for your effort? And they would give us a number, and then we would find a way to make that work. For me and Jason, Accidental Cyclops isn't our full-time job. It's a labor of love. It's a side gig that we love working on, because it's a fun, creative outlet for an industry that we care about and have been players in for a long time. So one of those things is, how do we make sure that the creators of those worlds are, compensated for their talent? And so we said, yeah, some people want a one time, they just want like, hey, writing a story, you're going to give me X cents a word, and like, cool, done. Or I'd like a percentage, like, okay, we'll figure out how to make that work. Like, so I guess being flexible and meaning it, I guess, when you want to do that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, and since this is your side gig, what is your process of working with the writers and the artists? How much, how much are you contributing to the final product versus the people that you're working with?
So for Strangehollow, a lot of our writers are working on, so in the Strangehollow project, and kind of my understanding, is very top down in design process. And what I mean by that is, we have a lot of the art from Emily, and she's creating some pieces. She's created some unique pieces like the cover that she's created specifically for this book. But a lot of the art we're using is pre-existing art from her books, and then sort of laying D&D on top of that. So what's fun about that is, say, here is the art. Hey, very talented fiction writers, go write some stories based upon this art that you think is interesting. Okay, now we have the art, now we have these stories, and like, cool. Now let's figure out D&D rules and other things that are things from those stories So it feels very, it's very cohesive, but it's from a top-down perspective as opposed to, here I design, 15 D&D subclasses. Let's make some stories up about the Hollow Treader, or make some stories up about the Moon Cursed, or the Way of the Waking Dream. Let's make some stories based upon these, mechanics. And then let's draw some art based upon these stories. So it's sort of that the art is sort of is the starting point for the whole story and the feel of that art. And then the stories that, people like Ed Greenwood, like who's just a wonderful human being, by the way. Like, he's just the nicest man. But that was something that we were able to, for lack of a term, access through Sean, because Sean has these relationships. Is that, and Sean's deal is like, he's the lead designer. He gets a percentage of the campaign, and then, X. So it's like, he was willing to open up his Rolodex to us. I think because we sold him on that, but trying to be good partners to work with in this industry, like that's, and making good relationships. And he's introduced us over to Matt and Sai over from Ghostfire Gaming, who have been phenomenal just to work with. Just kind of helping us out, answering questions. I wrote him an email a couple weeks ago when he brought me back like a novel, and just amazing that, that he was willing to do that for someone that he's, had a couple of Zoom calls in, and we high-fived at Gamma this year, kind of a thing. And so finding those good partnerships and being a good partner to those other people, and being responsive, and, and paying people on time, and being good about that sort of stuff. Like, what seems like kind of no-brainer block and tackling stuff from a business perspective. I don't know if that's why, but it doesn't seem like it's hurting us to be sort of good partners in that regard. I don't know what I really meandered on that question a lot.
No, I love the answer. I love where you got to with your answer. It was reminding me of when we met at Gamma, and we met at the party that we had, but the community is so tight knit, and I met so many other people that were working on, well, all types of games, but in this case TTRPGs, and seeing how tight knit the community was between different companies, which could be argued as being competitors, right? In some sense, but isn't really. It's like the way in which everyone works together and helps each other was really, really cool to witness. I mean, to your point, like you sending an email out and then getting a novel, as a response to help you is just really, really cool, and shows the power of just asking for help, which I feel like has been like a theme of a lot of your answers, asking to see if this content creator is interested in having a game created about their content, asking another, TTRPG creator a question or advice, and then seeing what they say. So that's really cool. I'm glad that you talked about that.
And I think that, like, there's the other side of that is sometimes people say no, and I was like, okay. And like, you ask, be respectful. They say no, like, cool. Like, we're not going to partner on this, and that's fine. Like, have a nice day. Like, and just maintaining those, it's just, kind of basic, humanity 101, for lack of a better term, but it's also just being good. Like, you're going to have existing relationship. And like you said, it is a small community. So if you're a jerk to people, that's probably going to get around pretty quickly. So there's an incentive to not be a jerk. But I think just from that community perspective, kind of piggyback on what you're saying there, it's like, nobody that's like, a joke that I commonly say is the best way to make a small fortune in gaming is to start with a large fortune. Like, nobody that's really into gaming is like doing it like for the money. It's because they love it. And, if they can make money at it as well, that's great. Like, if they can support a lifestyle while making games, that's great. So I think, creators, at the end of the day, yeah, we are all competing for the same dollars. There's only, so much money in D&D supplements that are out there, but elevating the hobby, and there's been a lot of stuff, with Dimension 20 and Critical Role that have sort of elevated the hobby, which is great. But we just want the high tide to raise all the boats. Like everybody just wants their stuff out there and for really cool stuff to get seen. Like, and that's the thing is there's so much cool stuff out there that it's hard sometimes to, as a creator, to cut through the noise and have people see your stuff. Like, so especially like, you get the smaller creators that are making really neat stuff. And it's like, how do you shine a light on that sort of stuff? Like, so you want that cool stuff because it's cool. Like, that mechanic is awesome. That system that you built for that game is super sweet. Like, you want that sort of stuff to get highlighted.
Yeah, I do think this is a case of rising tide lifts all boats. I was talking to Rico from the founder of Hit Point Press. I was interviewing him on another episode, and he was bringing up the stat that I think it's after 2021, there's been a huge amount more of $1 million campaigns in the TTRPG space specifically on Kickstarter, and it just kind of has grown a lot. And it seems like, that is just making the whole entire space. It's bringing more interest and then backers and money to all these other campaigns as well, which is really, really cool. Because one of the coolest parts about launching a Kickstarter is that you're tapping into this community of people that are interested in your game, right? Which is really, really cool. So I want to keep going on talking about Surviving Strangehollow specifically. This is your second campaign, and you raised $45,000 in the very first day when your first campaign did about $65,000, I believe, over the entire campaign. So getting kind of close to making the same amount as your first campaign in one day. Like, how did you do that? Like, what was the difference between your first and second campaign when it came to how you were marketing it?
Sure. And let me first quickly, because you mentioned Hit Point Press. So Emily Hare had done some art for Humblewood, and so she knew the folks over at Hit Point Press and made an introduction for us. And I work with Allie over there, who's great. Just to kind of like help each other out. Like, hey, they did some affiliate marketing for us. Like they posted about our campaign and their stuff, and we did it with theirs. I know they have a much bigger audience, and the same with Ghostfire. Just shout outs to those teams for, again, like, they mean it. Like, we talked about, like, everybody's so, like, helping each other out, like, but they really do, and again, like, it's a thing, don't abuse it, but like, it's one of those things that is great about this community. But back to your original question, which I remembered.
That's cool. I'm glad you pointed that out.
So, yeah, I mean, the long and short of it is, going through launch games process, did a lot of things for us. And, Sean, again, going back to Sean Merwin, he knows the Legends of Adventurous guys, Crooked Moon and what that Kickstarter did, which was insane. And they credit a lot of that to Launch Boom and to you guys. It's like, okay, well, we didn't, like, for cards on the table, hadn't heard about you really before that. And like, I started looking into it, had a couple calls, like, this kind of makes sense. And from a standpoint of how do we make a big impact with a product that, in a mature marketplace, the D&D source book supplement is a very mature marketplace. There's a lot of products out there, and you have to do something to cut through the noise and find the fans of your game. And I'm a recovering engineer, so that's my background. I'm a computer engineer, rather software engineer, and kind of worked in all aspects of software development, from testing and development and product management and engineering management and all that sort of stuff. So, I have more of an analytical mind that's like, okay, well, what's this thing? And, marketing can sometimes feel like a giant black box or furnace where you're just shoveling money in. And that doesn't feel great. Especially when, budgets are tight and you want to make it good uses of those ad dollars. And, Launch Boom with their process with the VIP and the reservation system, and sort of like, here is the process, here's the workflow, here are the lessons, do these things, and here's a roadmap to pre-launch, prep to pre-launch to, getting everything in place to launch, and then post-campaign, stuff like that, is just great for us because it could have, like, oh, there's a process of this, there's a rhyme and there's a reason, there's things like that. And, a lot, $45,000 about half of that was VIPs. So these are people that reserved, put $1 down to our campaign before it even launched. So we're getting those sort of leads coming in. We're getting non-VIP leads that are coming in. And then so when you're ready to launch, you have an audience that's ready to go. So that was great. It was an interesting day to launch, I will say, because two things happened. One, Facebook was down when we launched. So people that use Facebook to log into Kickstarter couldn't log into Kickstarter and back our campaign. So that wasn't great. And it also happened to be the same day that Brandon Sanderson launched his campaign. So there's a lot of money going to Brandon Sanderson. You know, the guy writes like a fiend. So like he's built a career. He deserves that. But you know, was like, oh man. But we found our fans. Those people we have, a lot of people that just love it. A couple people I'm thinking about. Michael J. Pastor, who's just probably our biggest fan on Strangehollow. His enthusiasm for the product and other people like him that found our game and backed it right away because we'd done all that sort of legwork of reaching out, finding our audience, getting them on our list, and then when we launched, being ready to go to support them. Because I think people have this myth of this overnight success, and that just, sometimes it happens, but it's like winning the lottery. Like, yeah, people win the lottery, and there's sometimes people have overnight successes. Those are it's about as likely. So a lot of what people don't see is all the work and effort before they hit that tipping point and became a thing. Like Legends of Adventurers, like they have a huge community backing them already, but Launchboom let them springboard into more than if they had just launched without, kind of a thing. So it's building that community, building that audience over time, and then launching, so that when you do fund quickly and you do get all the
100%. Yeah. It's, I love you brought up the overnight success thing, or the myth behind it. In the case of the Crooked Moon, right? It's like those guys had a huge campaign and over $4 million. And that was not an overnight success. That was something that they had been working at for years and years and years of doing content creation and building an audience and building a brand. And then that coupled with a pre-launch strategy to build an even bigger audience prior to the launch, was like a compounding effect. But still, it wouldn't have been possible to reach those numbers if they hadn't put in all the years and hours, of work.
They would have had a lot more, they would have had a much bigger marketing budget to hit $4 million had they not done all of that work. Your
biggest lesson when it comes to marketing, let's say, that you learned in this campaign versus your last one?
Yeah, I think, for the original Real Thing one, it was, we had a lot of people that weren't TTRPG fans that were Faith No More fans. Like, oh, I'll back this thing. This thing's interesting. Like, because of the novelty of it for something else that they love. So you had a lot of people that were outside of the TTRPG market that came into the TTRPG market, but probably, maybe only for this game, or maybe it made them a member of that community for life, and that's great. Versus this, where we had to just approach it very differently because, again, D&D 5e is a very mature marketplace. You have people like Crooked Moon, you have people like Ghostfire, you have people like Hit Point Press that are like, they've been doing this for, Hit Point Press, 20 plus campaigns, and I don't know how many Ghostfire has, but a bunch too. Like, they're very mature at this. They know what they're doing, and I think that asking them for advice was helpful. I think that we might have, if we had known what else was launching, we might have been convinced to push the date, but we were pretty set on a specific date because we didn't want to let it keep slipping. We already pushed it once. We actually originally were going to plan on launching it in 2023, and then after we got Sean on board, we're like, we really probably, or I think it was actually before that we had Sean on board, we're like, we're just not going to be ready for this. We're not going to be ready to give this the attention it deserves. I think probably been a little more honest with ourselves about giving ourselves more time to build up the pre-launch. I don't honestly believe that would have made us like a $3 million campaign, but that first day might have been better. We might have gotten to our funding goal faster, just giving ourselves a little bit more time versus feeling we had to rush it. And not that we didn't rush it. We still spent, I think, like 7 or 8 weeks in our pre-launch doing ad spend and stuff like that. So I think that's probably what I would have done, because it made all of those days a lot more nerve-wracking, and it felt like it had a lot more on the line every single day, because we only had 7 weeks or 7 or 8 weeks or something like that. So I think extending it by a month, so that we could have kept our cost per reservation low, kept our cost per lead really low, so we didn't overspend, bring those numbers up, because they're going to go up as the ads decay. But sort of understanding all of that, and I think for our next campaign, A, we know that, and B, we've sort of been through the launch from process before. So like, okay, these are the things we need to be thinking about. We need to start pre-launch way before, because I think all that sort of stuff, where just give it a little more time, and don't rush, and don't feel, I guess, beholden to some of the rules, like about, oh, you always have to launch in March, you always have to launch at, like, there are that data, I think, begets more data like that sometimes. Like, they're going to say that March is the best month because Brandon Sanderson raised $23 million, whatever he did in March. Like, okay, that's a bit of an outlier from a data point perspective, but like, it's but I think there are some trends like that, like trying to launch around certain times of year. You're competing with other dollars and stuff like that, and understanding that you kind of you do have to treat it like a business. You can love it, and you can bring that passion to the project, and bring that passion to your community for something that you're making, because it's it's a creative act, it's a creative art. There's also talent and skill and years of skill. Like, sometimes people get lucky, but usually it's just a lot of skill and a lot of effort that you're not seeing. You're like, oh, when this guy made this awesome thing, it's like, yeah, but he's been working at it for 20 years, whether or not it's not that game, but things for 20 years that have enabled that person to get to that place. So I think, like, I think I probably would have been more of an advocate for giving us some more time, and just, again, but we had already pushed it back once. I didn't really want to push it back again, because we know with Emily, like, we wanted to be good stewards of her world, and constantly pushing it back, would have degraded that relationship a bit. And we were concerned about that.
No, it makes sense. Yeah, timeline can be a difficult thing to figure it out, or timing of launch. There are a lot of different factors that play into it. I do think, I've been now doing this for 10 years. I've heard creators say fairly often, probably more often than not, that maybe we wish we took a little bit more time in the pre-launch, because of all the benefits that can happen of learning, what positioning is going to work best, the audience, being able to build a bigger list and all that. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, you guys still had a fantastic launch, and super successful.
And sometimes it's, just because the way life is, like, we'll be, we were doing ad review and budget and stuff like that every couple of days. And sometimes that was on the weekends, like, especially those early days when I didn't have a super great handle on it. And like, and I got there as time went on with Victor. But like, those first couple, I'm like, I don't know what I think this, like, what's good, like, in learning what that is. And I think, I think going through that process one time, I'm much better equipped for the next time. But I think that first time was pretty nerve-wracking, because I felt like every decision, it wasn't true, but it felt like every decision was like, this is going to make or break this campaign. And that's not really true, but that anxiety about that didn't make me feel great. I just wanted the campaign to get the start, so that I could stop worrying about that level of stuff.
You're right. It was all very, very normal, especially when learning a new skill set. So what is next for Accidental Cyclops? What's on the roadmap?
Getting the rest of the Real Thing anthology done. So that is Angel Dust and King for a Day, which is the completion of the Real Thing anthology. Getting Surviving Strangehollow out, and just in figuring out what the best way is to get that into people's hands, whether that be working with retailers and stuff like that. And then we have a couple things that, I've been talking about for a while. A couple games, probably more on the indie side. So this is, we're taking the Matt Damon approach. So you do a big movie, then you do an art movie. You do a big movie, then you do an art movie. So like we'll do we did a 5E campaign, and now we're going to do like some fun, more creative passion projects that Jason and I have been kind of running around our heads for a couple of years now. It's like you get an idea, you write it down, and you're like, cool, I'll come back to that later. And every time you get something around that idea, you write it down, you put it in. So when you're ready, when you're like, okay, now Strangehollow is done. Now we've got it out to people's hands. It's been fulfilled, or it's been sent to the fulfillment cell. Now we're just managing the fulfillment. Now what's next? You can go back to those notes, go back to those ideas. Say, okay, now what do I do with this? So that's one piece of the puzzle for us. And the other piece is a tech play that we were talking about. And I have a lot of details to share because it's still in the very early stages, but kind of going back to something I touched on earlier, which is how do we shine a light on indie creators that can help them, get their products seen, help them commercialize their products. There's a lot of good groups out there like IGDN and what's their name? Indie Press Revolution that do great things in that space for those creators. But more, that's kind of one of the things that's kind of also we're kind of working on that's in the very early stages. So lots of things that are sort of game related, but the next couple projects will probably be more indie games, and we'll at that point we'll decide if we want to do like another 5E or 6E or whatever product at that point. But kind of make those decisions when we come there. But it's just a fun, for us, it's a fun creative outlet. It's something that I'm just loving games and getting to add to that industry and meeting a lot of cool people and making those relationships and like having, going to cons and be able to, say hi to, Ed Greenwood and Elise Teague and people like that, and Dale Kingsmill and Sean and Matt over at Ghostfire and cool people like that, just to have like other fun people to hang out with. Because cons for us for a number of years have been like, oh, we're going to go and play some games together. Or like I would like Gen Con when I used to, go in there, is like, oh, let's try systems or games I haven't played before. Like I wanted to play Dread, which is a D&D with Jenga, which was an experience. It was super interesting. Like the table has never been that stressed. Like everybody's like backed away from the table. No one wants to accidentally bump it. It was an experience. And now it's become, I don't want to say work, but it's just a different sort of kind of experience where now it's about having fun conversation, meet people and seeing if there's fun stuff to do later. I've always been a personal proponent of having fun at work. I find that when I have fun at work or I'm having a good time at work, I enjoy what I'm doing. You don't enjoy every little thing about your work, but like if you're generally having fun at your work, at your job, you tend to do better work and you tend to be more energized. So, as long as, it keeps being fun, it keeps, letting me be creative, keeps, piquing my curiosity about things and playing around with stuff and meeting cool people. Like that's my goal out of it. And I'm never going to, make $1 billion in gaming, but like, if, it's something that I like and it's worth my time and, it's something that I get to give back and help other people and pay it forward to other creators that, that we've gotten help from. Like I said, we got help from people and like paying it forward to new creators. And that's something that, is just, fun to do and rewarding. That's kind of, the long version of what's next.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of things that are next. Well, we'll see. So you're not going to make $1 billion. We'll see if the third campaign on Kickstarter is $1 billion campaign, the first one ever. We'll see.
We'll see.
But all right, we'll see.
But we're not Brandon Sanderson, so probably not.
Probably not. Yeah, probably.
And that's okay.
That's okay. Well, I think it's a good place to end it. So, Mikey, I really appreciate you being on and sharing everything with us.
Thanks, Mark. Have a good one. Peace out.
All right. Bye, everyone.